Freeman Delusion, the organised pseudo-legal commercial argument in Australia.
At its heart, pseudo-law is about a time when the law was supposedly good, right and just, and it's now become corrupted because it sort of evil outside force has overtaken the country. But Australia's kind of founded on this idea that a foreign nation can come and take over a country. That's how we were founded at the moment of colonialization. So it has that kind of broad historical resonance too, like outside bodies coming in and taking over.
Yeah, could you tell us about that website and its founder?
Yeah, absolutely. So in our exploration of pseudo-law in Australia, we came across a gentleman called Robert Sudi, he runs a website called the Freeman Delusion, which is a really thorough and useful kind of record of all the pseudo-law arguments that have been made in Australia. So he's collecting all the case law and all the writing about these topics. And he himself is a former practitioner of pseudo-law. So he gave me the story. So back in the 2000s, he had some driving charges and he wanted to fight them. He didn't think they were just. So he went online and came across some of these pseudo-law concepts. And when he tried to apply them in court, obviously they didn't work. But the magistrate who was on that day, David Halpin, he had some other cases that had fallen over. So he had some time to engage with Sudi and sort of give him a hearing and also push back. And Sudi went from there to do his own research, as the quote goes again, and sort of realised the error of the thought process that had led him to use those pseudo-law arguments in court. But it was interesting, like he gave some really good insights, I think, into why these ideas appeal to people. You know, people, as I was saying, do turn to them in a moment of crisis. And when you do look at things like our legal system, our banking system, even our healthcare system, these are really like complex entities with their own language. Like if you're not a lawyer, the law can be pretty impenetrable and can start to look like a conspiracy arrayed against the individual. Like I don't think that's too hard to understand. So you can sort of see why people might react in such an extreme way. And he sort of pointed to things like the concept of apophenia. So it's the tendency to see meaningful connections and patterns between unrelated things. So once you sort of starting to go down this rabbit hole, you can start to sort of piece together the history of Australia, our legal system, all the sort of Baroque language of law, and put it together. But instead of, coming to the way that most of us agree law operates, you might come to a completely different conclusion.
So I spoke to a man called Robert Sudi, who in around 2012 had some driving offences and went online to kind of figure out a way to deal with them. He didn't think they were fair, right? And he stumbled into some of these pseudo-law ideas. When he took them to the court in front of Magistrate Halpin, he tried to use them. And David Halpin told me that day, I guess he'd had some other cases fall over, so he had time to kind of engage. And Robert was receptive to that and went away and did more research essentially and came to the conclusion that the ideas he'd tried to use weren't correct. And now he runs a website called the Freeman Delusion, which is a really valuable record of pseudo-law arguments in Australia, court records and others. So it was interesting, when somebody has the time to meaningfully engage with somebody, it can help. But of course, our courts don't really, that's very, very rare. And
Robert Sudi is a man who lives up in Northern Rivers, and he maintains this website now called the Freeman Delusion, which is probably the best record in Australia of pseudo-law belief. So he gathers all the case law and dissects all the ideas that people try in courts. But this project is the result of him actually having dabbled in this himself. So many decades ago, now he had some traffic infringement issues, some fines and things. Went to the magistrate's court to fight them using pseudo-law ideas that he'd found on the internet. But the magistrate of the day, who was on deck, David Halpin, he just had some time. Some other cases had been cancelled, so he had a bit more time to talk to Robert and sort of talk him through why his ideas weren't going to fly, point him in some good directions. And it basically just sort of raised a question, I guess, in Robert's mind. In his telling, he told me he sort of went home, started doing his own research, and he actually came across a really interesting case in Canada called Meads versus Meads, Meads and Meads. It's a family law case, and basically it's one of the most complete dissections of pseudo-law beliefs. The judge in that case went through each element of the defendant, the husband's claims and all his different, red thumbprint on the documents and all that jazz. And Robert Sudi here in Australia found that like a really compelling document and a really interesting dissection. It did start to change his mind, and it was a journey, but now he maintains this website. It's probably like the best, most complete record of pseudo law thought in Australia. So people can, but it's that combination of like a generous ear and your own journey, an intellectual humility, like Tabitha said, the willingness to concede you're wrong. And I think we can all probably learn something from Robert, because there's all beliefs that we probably should have challenged, not just conspiratorial ones.
Freeman Delusion, the organised pseudo-legal commercial argument in Australia.